Every government action has a reaction. And when it comes to the affordability crisis here in the United States, 57% of American renters right now say the American dream is all but dead for them. The American dream that was sold to us was if we worked hard, you could be able to afford a home and live comfortably for the rest of your life until you're retired. And a lot of fingers are pointing to the government for them to do something. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at some of these government policies that have been enacted years, decades ago, and how it's affected the affordability crisis here today. And at the end, I want you to tell me if you think the government is responsible for creating the housing market that we have today. Do you remember way back when we had the last financial crisis and there were a record number of foreclosed properties across the United States? I happened to come across an old news clip from ABC News that talked about exactly what banks were going to do with their properties that were sitting there vacant. And this was the catalyst to all corporate investors.
We have a lot of vacant homes in the country, and certainly, where you have bank-owned properties, it's to their benefit to have someone in there who'll keep up the property.
At that time, our tax dollars saved a lot of banks from going under. You can debate whether that was the right thing to do. That was another government policy at that time that people were really fighting over. But when you watch this next clip, it's when actually my mouth dropped, because you're going to see this is actually the catalyst to make corporate investors buy up as many homes as possible.
He's reached the conclusion that being foreclosed upon is his best option.
Rather than live month to month worrying about my survival, I have decided that the better course is to walk away from this home.
And he is working with a consulting firm called youwalkaway.com, co-founded by Chad Rule.
Obviously, this has a negative repercussion on their credit, but they're willing to take that because they're not going to use their credit to go buy another home.
I don't know what's happened to Chad. I've been trying to look him up, but he was the original institutional investor that were buying up very affordable foreclosed homes so he could turn them into rentals. But wait, there's more to this clip. You have to see this next part.
But here's another option, one that Baker himself has been advocating. Create a system that lets people who lose their homes to the lending bank stay on in the house as renters.
They would have the option to stay there as a renter for up to 5 years paying that rent. So what it does is it gives them security in their home, and it also, from the standpoint of the neighborhood, keeps the home occupied.
Not exactly an inspiring vision of the home ownership that is part of the American dream, but that dream takes a down payment.
You see what they did there? They turned the homeowners into renters, and institutional investors found out that they could make a lot of money. And then they sat back in their boardrooms and figured out how they could even own more homes. And then they realized that if they own enough homes, they could dictate the market in areas. And they're doing it now. They're owning so many neighborhoods that they're literally dictating how much market price is going up for, and they're dictating how much rentals are. That's why you haven't seen a big dip in rental prices like they promised us about 2 years ago. This is one of those times that government needs to step in and make some policies that restrict how many homes that an institutional investor can purchase in a specific area. That so many homes in one area cannot be owned by one entity. We're turning into a monopoly. If it continues down this road, everybody at one point is going to be making out one rental check to one specific company. I'm not saying who.
Now it's Blackstone Group.
By the way, they just brought out Tricon that was buying up the most homes during the pandemic. Yeah, they have now another 38,000 homes. All right, it's time for us to talk about home builders. They're the ones that haven't been building homes for the last 2-3 decades. And the reason being, well, the last recession that happened, they had an oversupply of homes that they thought they were going to be able to sell. And of course, the market fell under them. Since then, they haven't built enough. But how has the government really made it easier for them to build more homes, even if they wanted to? There's all sorts of red tape when it comes to construction of homes. And it all starts with the whole planning and rezoning of areas that need to be built. First, you have to buy the piece of land, and it could be in a fantastic area, and it may be zoned for only single-family homes. That doesn't really help the affordability crisis. There are many home builders that would love to build condos, multifamily homes, townhomes, even row homes, but they're only zoned for single-family homes. So they have to go through this whole entire process to have that land rezoned. And whenever you're going through that process, it takes a very long time. It can take up to 10 to 15 years for them to even develop the land. So they have to wait almost 15 years to get the return on their investment that they've put put into that piece of land to begin with. Now, rezoning has gotten a little bit easier, and believe it or not, this is one of the times that the federal government has actually given incentives to some areas that are willing to take federal money to have some areas rezoned for multifamily. Here's the catch on that. Whenever you do anything like that in anywhere in the United States, it doesn't matter. You still have to have the acceptance of the community. There has to be a vote on it.
I mean, it's been empty for 40 years. Why now?
Thousands of people in 3 West Knoxville communities are fighting developers.
And inevitably, just like this commenter says, whenever you talk about any type of affordable housing, the community votes against it because they think that affordable means riffraff. The first apartment I ever rented in my whole entire life was considered tax credit housing. And I was in that affordable housing range. And my husband and I are law-abiding citizens. Everybody deserves a chance. And immediately, a lot of people's brains think that it's going to bring their property value down to have townhomes or multifamily homes near their specific neighborhood. And I will tell you this, the way that appraisals work, the comparables have to compare to what you have in your neighborhood itself. You can't compare a townhome to a single family house. It isn't the same kind of appraisal process because those townhomes are $130 per square foot and your neighborhood's comparables are $250 per square foot. That isn't going to bring down the comparables in your neighborhood. They're still $250 per square foot. But a lot of people don't believe that. They think that because these lower income homes are going to be near their houses now, their houses are worth less. Just not how comparables work. That's not how the appraisal process works. The other thing that home builders have been facing for the last several years is there's always been an initiative by the government for home builders to build more energy efficient homes. Home builders claim that this will add another $20,000 to the price of the home. And us as consumers, if you're building a brand new home, of course we want it to be more energy efficient. So is there any truth to the fact that it actually costs an extra $20,000? Well, that depends on what the regulations are. A lot of these regulations are asking for things for like wiring for an electric car. Not all of us are going to get electric cars, and the wiring costs extra money. And I'll give you another example. Several years ago, there was a product called Radiant Barrier. And if you live in the South, you know what I'm talking about. So it basically looks like a regular wood board on one side, and it goes along the roof line. And on the other side, it has a foil backing. When that first came out, it was highly expensive. Over time, it's gotten a lot cheaper. But if you wanted that in your house, you had to pay an additional like $10,000 to have that radiant barrier. Of course, it brought your energy bills down, but you got to take that $10,000 and figure out how long will it actually take to bring your energy bills to where you need it to be. You know, like you have to offset the cost. You know, putting this investment of $10,000 now, how much of a savings is it going to really bring to my house itself? But for some people, that initial cost isn't worth it to them. And when home builders are forced to do that, that means that they have to tack it to the price of the house. And the more energy efficient green housing that we build, the more it's going to make those homes more expensive. And if we're looking at trying to make homes more affordable and more energy efficient, they're going to cost more. You can't have one or without the other, unless they can find a way to get these building materials at a lesser cost. The other problem that a lot of home builders are facing right now, and is making the affordability crisis even worse, is the fact that they are facing huge labor shortages. We just don't have enough qualified workers to build these houses. They're having a hard time finding plumbers. They're having a hard time finding electricians. And the ones that they are finding are a lot more expensive than they used to be. And this is one of those times I think the government has caused that problem too. When I was in high school, you could actually even choose what kind of degree that you wanted. If you wanted a trade, it was a different type of high school degree than if you wanted a college degree. That was called a college prep high school diploma. And now I don't know of many high schools that even offer those type of trades. Even in the 90s, they had shut down a lot of those types of trades that were available in high schools. And over the years, they've shut down even more. But the focus of many high schools, because my kids have just finished both of them, is for you to prepare for college. Not all kids need to go to college. We all know that. And some kids are not encouraged enough to enter into the trades. Even though it can be a very lucrative job to be a plumber or an electrician, it's not encouraged to younger people to do that type of job. And I put that on our education system. And with that, that's what has made homes even more unaffordable. So that's some of the things that the builders have been facing for quite some time. I know a lot of people don't really love home builders. They do face an uphill battle when it comes to building houses. It isn't easy peasy. And I know a lot of them are like, well, they're just making bank and they don't care about us and they build a crappy product and blah, blah, blah. I understand. I've seen my fair share of crappy ones, but there are some good ones out there that really are fighting the good fight against a lot of regulations that are totally unnecessary. I just really don't want to know, if you needed to buy a brand new home, do you really need an electric car charging station in your garage right now? Do you think that's a necessary thing? Or do you think that could be something that could have been taken off the price of the home? It looks like they've paused in many states the building codes that the federal government wants homes to be energy efficient to. Some states it's going to take them till 2031 to adjust to these new building regulations. According to the Washington Post, they said in North Carolina, the Republican-controlled legislature passed a law last year freezing residential home building standards, making it illegal to update them until 2031. And then this year, the home building industry in Michigan has come against the state's plan to adopt the latest energy code. The industry is rallying its members to pressure Governor Whitmer to abandon her administration's proposal to repeat its claim it will increase homes' costs by $20,000. In Colorado, the housing industry is backed a bill that could make it harder to adopt the latest standards to decarbonize buildings. The bill mandates that any code changes pay for themselves within 10 years. That makes sense. If you're going to put something in there that's going to cost more money, you got to make sure that the payout works out. Tim Minton, Executive Vice President of North Carolina Home Builders Association, also cited that spiraling home prices in his groups, plus the freeze of residential energy standards. I'm not going to get into a debate about climate change. What I'm about to get into a debate about is affordability, he said in an interview. And he's right. If we continue down this road where we're constantly fighting against climate change, and I'm not saying that climate change is real or not real, I'm not even going to get in that debate. But whenever you add a new standard like radiant barrier and plugs for wiring for electric cars, that does make affordability more of a problem. That cost on one side says it's as little as $6,500 just to upgrade a house. On the other side, they're saying it's going to cost them $20,000. And I think what it is there is a discrepancy in the fact that they're saying the materials are going to only cost $6,500 more, but who's going to put those materials in? That's when the cost comes out to $20,000. And when you leave it in politicians' hands and they see a number and they think that's the only number and they vote on these things, then it doesn't really make sense for the community. I think, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I want to get your opinion about it. If you're going to make any kind of policy change when it comes to building codes and energy efficiency, you should make it a choice for the consumer. Do you want to pay $150,000 to have a standard built home, or do you want an energy efficient home? And then you can choose the energy efficiencies that you want for your specific home. But that's just my opinion. I want to get your opinion about that.
When my parents were my age, they both made less than half of what I make, and they lived alone. I cannot afford to live anywhere alone. A one-bedroom apartment, $1,800. Two-bedroom apartment, $2,200. The American dream is dead. It is over.
I don't know if you saw the news. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage right now is averaging out at 7.1%. And I know that back at the beginning of 2024, they said that mortgage interest rates were going to be coming down. Well, that was before. When the Federal Reserve at the beginning of the year said that they were going to make some rate cuts, that meant that mortgage rates would probably come down as well. Well, the Federal Reserve said they're now pausing any kind of rate cuts because of the fact they haven't gotten inflation under control. And the bonds market reacted and they increased how much it's going to cost you to get a mortgage. But let's go ahead and take a little Wayback Machine. When the Federal Reserve kept interest rates very low during the pandemic. I honestly think this is what threw the whole monkey wrench into the affordability crisis here in the United States. They kept interest rates ridiculously low for a ridiculous amount of time. Whether you agree with what they did or not, I personally think that this is what made home prices go absolutely bananas. Not only did we have institutional investors, of course, buying up as many homes as possible during that time to turn them into rental properties, but we had tons of people wanting to get that cheap money, that cheap financeable money. And some people got like 2.7% interest rates. Normally, when we go back in history and start looking at when interest rates go up for houses, that usually means that the home prices start coming down. But for the last couple of years, interest rates have increased and home prices are still ticking up. Again, that's because of lack of supply. But the other reason is because people that got that 2.7% interest rate are not willing to sell their home even if they don't love it. Even if they don't love it, why would you leave when you have such a low interest rate? And most people are saying that we'll never see interest rates like that again in history. But they also said that after 2007. So I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath that we'll ever see interest rates again in the twos, but it sure would be nice. Now, several people have proposed the fact that maybe the federal government, since so many people can't get into their first home, that they should offer some kind of first-time home buyer incentive, just like they did after the last financial crash. I'm going to tell you right now that the reason why the government isn't going to do that is because we still have a lack of supply of homes. And if you put a bunch of money into people's hands that have been looking for a more affordable place to live, do you know what's going to happen to the housing market at that time? It's going to make the home prices go up even more because they now have more equity, more leverage to put into the next house. If you give them $6,500 to buy their first house, all those small homes that are already super competitive are going to have a rush and people are going to overbid. The best incentive that we could give right now, if we're going to make the American dream possible for many homeowners, is to incentivize people that do live in smaller houses, give them some kind of tax credit that when they do sell their house, that they're not selling it to a corporation, make that part of the rule. And maybe instead of giving the buyer the $6,500, give the seller the $6,500 to sell their house. That would be the right thing to do. Look, there has been some proposals that's been made by the current administration to allow for more supply to be freed up. None of those things have passed. They're just initiatives right now. But in the meantime, it looks like the American dream is going to be out of reach for more and more Americans. Currently, the median price home here in the United States costs around $422,000. According to the Visual Capitalist, as of 2023, an American household hoping to buy the median price home needs to make at least $100,000 a year. In some cities, they need to make 3 to 4 times that amount in order to buy a house. We have an affordability problem. And that I know, as much as you hate, don't let the government meddle in things. They always ruin it. Families that are making the median household income are far below the threshold to be able to buy the median priced home here in the United States. And if we don't have some kind of intervention, it's going to only get worse. We don't have enough homes, like I said. Builders are being restricted to build more affordable homes. We don't have enough of a labor force to build those homes. We don't have enough land development to build those homes. We've allowed corporations to go buck wild and buy as many affordable houses across the United States, dictating the price of how much some of these neighborhoods are going for as far as rent and how much they're getting sold for. But I want to hear your ideas on how we can get the American dream to own a home back into the people's hands. It's going to be really interesting. If you have a really good idea, I'll explore it in my next video about this. To watch more videos about the death of the American dream, you're going to want to watch these videos right here. My name is Kristina Smallhorn, your real estate whisperer, and I tell you all this because good real estate information matters.